Hello, welcome to the Outlook. I'm Rebecca, I'm your host today. We're discussing about landlord and tenancy laws in Uganda. So basically we want to help you to understand about tenancy and landlord laws in Uganda. I'm here with my colleague in the profession, Council Kalisa. Welcome to the Outlook. We are glad to host you today.
Thank you.
Could you help our viewers understand more on what tenancy and landlord laws are all about? What's a tenant? Who is a tenant, in your opinion?
Thank you for having me here. A tenancy, in simple terms, is an interest which a person has over property that he has, that is in their possession, and for a period of time, and which he pays rent for. So a person in these terms can be you or me or an entity. Like a company can be a tenant. So when you enter a tenancy, you enter it for a period of time with someone or another entity that's the owner of a property, and then you pay a certain amount of money for having possession or using that. So that is the right that you have in that property.
For a short period of time, okay. For a period of time. And the owner of the property, that's the landlord.
Yes.
And this is different from leases and lessors. Or does the same apply?
It's pretty much the same. If we go into leases, that is a totally different area, because leases it's another totally type of tenure or ownership of land. It is exclusive. It is the rights that are in the leases are not the same as a tenant. A tenant, you are restricted somehow, not to the level of a lease. A lease, you have rights that are similar to an owner, as if you own the land.
Yes.
But in this case, you are just a tenant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Council, would you mind now explaining to us about the key issues or key principles that were brought out in the new Act, Landlord and Tenancy Act of 2022, vis-a-vis what was in the old law of the Rent Restrictions Act, Cap 231? Yeah.
So for us to understand what the law talks about, the current law, the Landlord and Tenancy Act of 2022, we need to understand the background. And that is the reasons why it was passed. Initially, it was passed to mainly look at the relationship between the landlord and tenant, which is primarily the reason it was done. But also it was to reform and consolidate the laws in relation to the landlord and tenancy relationship. Good. So when we look at that, that means we are repealing the previous act, which was the Rent Restriction Act. So mainly in this new act, we are looking at the act providing for the form of agreement, how the Landlord and Tenancy Act, the tenants enter into the relationship. It provides a form which in the act, like form of agreement, which the parties enter within. It talks about how this relationship can be terminated. It also brings about issues of how rent can be paid, things to do about the security that is paid by tenants. It has to do with periods, how the landlord can collect their rent in case the tenant defaults.
Yeah.
It also does what? Tackles such issues mainly.
Yeah.
It also deals with issues to do with notices, how they give notice to a tenant.
Yeah.
It provides generally, and importantly, it also looks at the obligations and duties of both the landlord and tenant.
Thank you for that. So in principle, one has to sign a tenancy agreement. This is what I've learned. One has to have a tenancy agreement. So in the tenancy agreement, what are the elements that one should look out for every time they receive a tenancy agreement? What are the things they shouldn't miss out?
If you look at that new law, it's not that in every instance you have to enter into an agreement. Because an agreement, it lays down and tells you that an agreement can be oral, written,
yeah.
right? or in a form of data. Since now we are in a lot of IT advancement,
Yes.
an agreement can be reached through a form of data. So, but it
Like
puts
WhatsApp?
Yes.
Okay.
You can have a conversation with me, and if you're my landlord and I'm your tenant, the terms of our agreement can be implied from the communication we have that is online.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but that given that agreement, however, an agreement has to be written in written form. If the amount of rent is above 500,000.
So that's one condition.
Yes. So if the rent is above 500,000, if I come to your house and say I am going to rent your house, and it is above 500,000, then we must have a written agreement. And this agreement is, the form is provided for
in the act. Yeah.
So this kind of changes. The previous act did not give the form of how
the tenancy agreement should look.
Yes. So if you go to this act, there is a full agreement that talks about the obligations of the parties, how it can be terminated, dispute resolution, all those that are usually part of an agreement.
So if I do not have access to the act, off the top of my head, what should I look out for? Like, I mean, our viewers will not have access to the act as fast as we lawyers would do. So, like, what should they look out for?
Well, importantly, mostly it's the duties and obligations.
Yeah.
To have them clearly spelled out.
Yeah.
And also to have the term fixed.
Yes.
You have to be sure of the term within which you are renting.
Yes.
Because you do not want to reach a certain point and say things, clauses like having the term automatically renewed.
Sure.
Right? You must have all that. Then you also have to look at, importantly, on the termination, the termination of that agreement, right?
Yes.
How can the tenant terminate, or how can the landlord terminate? How much period of time do you need to terminate? Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So ideally, it comes down to both of you parties. You need to agree with this, and I would advise any kind of tenant or landlord, if they don't understand these clauses that have to be made in these agreements, to consult a lawyer.
Yes.
Because some of these things are left out in agreements by lay people, right, who have not consulted, and eventually they turn out to be problems.
Very big issues. Very big issues. Yeah.
Or sometimes they take it upon themselves and go maybe to the internet. Since now there are resources on the internet, you download a template and do not understand the terms that are in that, and you end up signing. And now the act is very strict about the agreements that are signed between tenants and landlords.
Yes.
And how they impact their relationship, especially when there is a dispute and they go to court. Once you have signed that agreement,
you're bound by the terms.
Bound by the terms.
Okay.
So it is important to take care and look at these terms that govern your relationship to avoid such issues.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, Council Kalisa. I forgot to ask you about the issue of rent increment, because that's a very big issue as well. I think we should address it in terms of how much rent can one increase, and at what interval of, like, 2 months, 3 months, how long should one increase the rent?
We've had instances where landlords increase rent. It was an issue during even COVID. People faced a lot of challenges with rent. But the law now is talking about how you increase rent, and it has set a standard of 10%. That you can't increase rent beyond 10% of how much you pay. So, for example, if you're paying 1 million, the 10% would be 100,000.
Right?
Yeah. And this cannot be done it cannot be more than once in a year. So there should be an interval of 12 months before a landlord can increase the rent.
That's very fair for the tenant, yes.
It sounds fair, yes, but in my opinion, if you ask me, it is because other jurisdictions have looked at these things, and maybe we can later discuss about them. Because if, for example, a landlord decides to increase rent every year,
yes,
right, it won't make business sense. Because you also have to understand that landlords are not. Sometimes we tend to look at landlords in terms of residentials, but there's also business premises,
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a business and someone increases 10%
every 12
year,
months,
every 12 months,
it makes no financial sense.
It does not make financial sense.
True.
Yeah. So the act is kind of lacking in that aspect. And if you look at other jurisdictions like Kenya,
yeah,
issues to do with rent increment
are left to the landlord.
Not left to the landlord. But if there is a dispute about rent increment,
yeah,
because the landlord is supposed to give you a notice,
yes,
right, before they can increase,
yes,
60-day notice.
60 days, yes.
So when they give you this notice, you have a right to refuse, and if you negotiate and you cannot reach to an agreement,
then you're free to leave the premises.
One of the parties. No. That's not how it works. That's why the Tenancy Act is supposed to protect the tenant, because they are kind of the underdog in this thing, right? So what happens, for example, in Kenya, they take this kind of dispute to a tribunal, and the tribunal usually has set limits of rent in different areas, right?
Yes.
Which in this case, our particular act, I have not seen it tackle that issue.
Yes.
If you keep on increasing the rent, what will happen, right? But also another issue is that a landlord can also reduce rent, though in our act I've seen it a bit limited. In other jurisdictions, I've seen that reduction can be done if, for example, you are providing kind of services in a business premise, and say you are doing consultancy services, and you stop providing a particular service which has bringing in an income.
Yes.
Right. In different jurisdictions, a landlord is supposed to what?
To reduce the rent.
You get it to that approximately to that amount of revenue you're losing because of no longer providing that service.
That's quite fair, isn't it? Yes. But we don't have that in our laws here.
We are a little bit lacking in our law in that area. Yeah.
And what about anything like security? Because I know some landlords ask for security for rent.
So
I don't know, they ask for like passports, IDs.
Yes.
Is it something we should be okay doing, or is it within the laws or not?
Yeah, that goes down to the formation of the relationship between the tenant and the landlord.
Yes.
So the law has set in place a requirement of how you can enter this kind of relationship. So one of them is that you have to provide identification, and this is kind of like a security issue.
Yes.
Whereby you have to provide identification in terms of a national ID, a passport.
If you're a foreigner,
Yes, if you're a foreigner, or driving permit.
Yes.
Right. Or an alien card if you're, for example, a refugee.
Yes.
Right. Those are measures that have been put in place so that you can be able to identify
who you are.
Yeah. And these are these are requirements that are conditional to this relationship to be legally binding. You understand? So if a landlord gets someone without this kind of identification, then that agreement is illegal. Right? Yes. So another issue is about security. You mentioned about security.
Security, yes.
The issue of security is contentious, but I believe the act lays down about, I think it is a 12th of the amount, right?
Not the entire amount, like most landlords do it here.
Not the entire. It is now a 12th applies if you're paying for it, like
a 1 year.
Yes, in periods.
Yes.
Yeah, but otherwise it's supposed to be 1 month payment, right?
Yes.
It cannot exceed 1 month. payment. And then, but it also lays down procedures, or it protects the tenant to be able to collect this security when the relationship is terminated.
It's terminated, yes.
Right? Because we've had instances where the landlord
refuses to return the money.
Yes,
yeah.
you understand. So when the landlord refuses to return the money, the tenant has a remedy. They go to court and do what? And be able to get this security. Then also, because the landlord is, you're supposed, because you have the obligation to leave the house the way you found it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Remember, that's what the security is for. So when you get out of the house and it is inspected and it is found that certain things have been damaged, that security is supposed to be used to cover the costs.
To cover the costs.
Understand?
To compensate.
Yes. But the Act is also saying that you as a tenant, because sometimes we have this kind of thing whereby you do not trust that the landlord is going to
give you money back.
Not necessarily give you the money back, but be able to get people that are going to work on that within the cost that is expected.
Yes.
Right?
So then, can you repair the damages?
Yes.
Then ask for your security back?
Yes. The Act says you repair the damages. Right?
Yes.
Put the house back to how it was. And then you ask for your security.
That's very important.
And if the landlord decides to do that, you as the tenant, you have the right to request for the cost, the evidence of the cost, so that you can calculate your balance and it's given back to you.
Yeah.
And none of you can actually take advantage of that situation to make some more money off the security.
Yes.
Because the Act says that these things that are done are supposed to be at the market cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So
that's very helpful, because it's a it happens to almost everyone before they shift.
Yes.
The landlord is refusing to return the money. You're saying, no, your painter is too expensive, and the landlord is like, that's the painter I use. So thank you for bringing that out. Let's take a break and we shall be back shortly. Welcome back to the Outlook. There is a question that arises about the duties and obligations of each one of the parties. You know, some of the landlords in Uganda make us feel like we're at their mercy. I have heard stories of landlords sexually harassing their tenants because, you failed to pay your rent, so now you have to pay in kind. Is this part of the duty of a tenant, paying in kind? What are the duties in the law? What are the duties of a tenant? What are the obligations?
Yeah. So like I said, one of the main objectives of this law is to provide the duties and obligations. Now, of course, as you know, that the duties of the other party are the obligations of
this party,
of the other party.
Yeah.
So, when you look at this law, it lays down the rights of a tenant.
The tenant, yeah.
And one of them, and the most important one, is quiet possession.
Yes.
Right? Now, quiet possession in simple terms would mean that if I am renting this place from you, I have the right to own it, stay in it, or use it without any kind of disturbance. Interruption.
Yes.
Right? So if you talk about that kind of sexual harassment and things like that, then you know
they're overstepping.
Yes. It is overstepping, right? And this breach of contract can be treated as a breach of contract.
Yes.
Right? So that's one of the rights of the landlord, of the tenant rather.
The tenant, yeah.
And also the landlord is supposed to pay taxes of ground rent. You understand?
Yes.
If it's, for example, here in Kampala, you pay to KCCA this kind of ground rent.
Yeah.
Right? All the taxes that are involved. The issue of utilities is usually on the landlord, but that depends on the meters. There are different types of tenancies and relationships. So in certain areas you find for example, water is metered separately for each house.
Yes.
Right? or now that there is to issue with electricity, there is what they call yaka, right?
Yes.
So you find that you as a
tenant, you
have to pay yourself for yourself. So if there is a separate meter,
yes,
get it, then you have to pay.
Yeah.
But then sometimes the landlord includes this kind of especially water.
Utilities, water, yes.
Yes, and garbage collection, security, and you find they put it on the what? On the rent that you are paying. So that the issue of utilities is usually moved around. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Switches depending on the type of agreement that you've signed.
Then maybe the duties of the tenant include as a tenant, you're not supposed to become to do things that turn out to be a nuisance.
Yes.
Right?
Parties, loud music.
Yes. Things that are going to disturb the peace, privacy of other people,
tenants. Yes.
Other tenants or neighbors.
Or the neighbors.
Right. This now pulls into issues of KCCA and having zoning, different kinds of zoning. Yes. Right. Yes. In areas, say for example, that residential. And then KCCA issues a permit or trading license for a
bar and restaurant. So
that is one of the challenges that now the law kind of faces.
Yes.
Right. So you will find different wars being fought, for example, down in Kololo, where there is a number of residences. Then someone sells off their property and it turns into
a disco.
Bar, right? Someone rents it out to be a bar. Yeah. They make noise for you. So that is one of your duties, not to become a nuisance. Then of course you have a duty to pay rent, which is self-explanatory. Yes. Right. Then you have the duty to keep the premises of which you're staying in correct condition. Yes. Right. Livable
proper
condition.
tenantable conditions. Yes.
That is the duty now of the landlord. But for you as a tenant, you're supposed to maintain and keep it in the way you have found it generally. Right. Yes. Maybe one of the duties that I'd forgotten about the landlord is to repair, be able to keep the house in a condition that is livable, right?
Yes.
Things to do with broken showers, toilets, kitchens, those
pipes
things,
spilling water in the road.
Water, the sewerage connections and all those things are part of the duties of the landlord. Yes. And the good thing, the act talks a lot about those things and how you're supposed to give notice to the landlord. And it also goes down to how a tenant incurs. The certain times the tenant can do what? Can repair these things on their own. And once they do that, the act says that you can go and provide the receipts, quotations, and then it's reduced from your rent. Yes. Or it is reimbursed. Okay. It is specific that it is reimbursed. And if there is failure to reimburse, right, then it is deducted from your rent. From the rent. And now that goes both ways. Very important. Right? Very important. It goes both ways. Yes. That if the landlord comes and finds that certain things have been damaged, upon the negligence of the tenant should pay. He notifies the tenant to do that, to work on this. But once the tenant fails, he can work on it and then do what? Charge the tenant. Right? Very important. So the same thing happens with the tenant. That's fair. Yes. So for the record, there is nothing in the law about paying in kind. So landlords stop demanding for sex from your tenants. It's wrong. It's illegal. Thank you, Kalisa. Let's take a break. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Outlook. Council, there is a sticky issue about tenants refusing to pay rent, failing sometimes, genuinely failing to pay rent, others refusing to pay rent. How does the law protect
landlords whose tenants have become stubborn like that?
Okay. The law, the current law protects them, and it gives them the remedy of going to court.
Yes.
Great. So if a tenant fails or refuses to pay rent, right?
There are steps that you follow before
the landlord
you end
goes to court,
up.
with competent jurisdiction,
Yeah.
right? And this law has provided even like for the small claims procedures.
Yes.
That is for matters which have a lower threshold,
Yes.
which usually that's what rent is about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So first of all, he goes to
Below 10 million.
yes,
Yes.
yes. So and if this default of rent continues for more than 30 days,
Yes.
right, you can can go and
Re-enter.
re-enter and eject the what?
Really?
The tenant.
Notice of 30 days. So termination notice of 30 days.
No, if he has reported to court,
Okay.
right? If he has gone to court and this tenant continues to not pay
Yes.
with 30 days
Yeah.
after court, right? He has the right to re-enter the premises, right? But he has to do this with the LC officials. This can be the LC one of the area, and also with police.
Police, yes.
Right? I believe maybe this would have remedied, for example, loss of property claims by
Yes.
tenants
Yes.
that they have
That,
lost certain
I
property
had
and
a big TV which they did not have.
exactly. You get. So that is the main remedy that the law gives.
So, first issue of a tenancy, not termination of tenancy,
Yes. But then also
and
if in the event that this right of re-entry,
yes,
right, it doesn't mean that the landlord has collected his money.
no, it doesn't.
It doesn't mean
No.
that, right?
Yeah.
But then the law says this right of re-entry does not remove the right
Your obligation to pay rent.
exactly
Yes.
or the landlord to pursue other avenues to collect his money.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes sense.
So the landlord re-entering means just evicting you, saying,
Yes,
I need you to leave so that I can get another tenant who pays me.
exactly.
But then you still have the obligation to pay the arrears.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I don't want the viewers to get this wrong. It doesn't mean that when you fail to pay, the landlord can come and just evict you. No, there are procedures.
There is a procedure they must follow.
They must follow. They must
Yes.
go to court, and you understand.
Then when they
So-
come to evict you,
Yes.
the chairman LC must be present, the policeman must be present,
Yes.
an inventory of the items that were in the house has to be taken. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So that you don't claim that you had an item that is missing, yet it actually wasn't
yes.
there.
So why the law is kind of vague
Yes.
on that issue of coming in and taking the property, because it doesn't mention that you come in and take. For it gives you the right of re-entry. So
Re-entry.
it does not define what that re-entry means.
Re-entry means
But
you
then,
evict, right?
no, it doesn't. It doesn't
No, it
mean
doesn't.
evict. It doesn't necessarily mean evict.
Yeah.
Re-entry doesn't necessarily mean evict. But then, if you understand the laws of landlord and tenancy, there is also the Distress for Rent
Yeah.
Act,
Yeah.
right? This is where a bailiff comes in, and now a
Takes-
bailiff, if you look at that act, the definition of the bailiff includes the landlord,
The landlord.
right? A landlord or a bailiff that's defined under the laws
Okay.
that govern the bailiffs, right?
Right.
So no one else apart from the landlord, and a
And
licensed
a licensed
bailiff.
bailiff. Council, one question I've been pondering upon is the issue of a tenant who wants to live, who still enjoys the places that they're staying in, but the landlords are requesting them to move. Either they've sold the property or they want to renovate the property, but the tenant is still comfortable. What are the remedies available for such a situation?
The it goes back, before we even get into the act, it goes back to just the normal practices, the laws of contract. And it is what we call the freedom to contract, right? So you have the right to terminate the agreement, and it's one of the ways that a tenancy can, landlord-tenancy relationship can be terminated.
Okay.
It can be terminated by either party, and that is by giving notice. So either party can give notice, right? That I want to end this relationship. The landlord can say you need to leave my premises within this and this period, right? The Act has provided these stipulated the timelines within which a landlord can give notice, right? It says that, for example, if you pay monthly, if you're in a premise and you're paying monthly, then that landlord is supposed to give you 1 month's notice, right? If you pay a year each year, then it is 6 months notice, right? So in this case, the landlord will come and tell you why. Within 1 month, I need you out of my house.
30 days, yeah?
Right. And once they give you this kind of notice, they do not have to give you reasons. Because it is my property, I can do with it whatever I want, right? Yes. So, talking about termination and how it can be ended, the relationship can be ended, that is one of the ways, by notice, right? Other modes is when, for example, a tenant passes away, of course, automatically, naturally, like any other contract.
But if the tenant has dependents who still want to remain
then they will enter a relationship.
A fresh relationship.
With the landlord. Because the relationship that was entered was with the person that
has passed
away, not with the people he's staying with, or his children, or you understand.
I understand.
So that is another way. Then there are times whereby tenants tend to abandon the premises.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
There are times, for example, a tenant travels.
Yes.
Right?
Without notification to the landlord.
The landlord stays there, nothing. There's no communication.
There's no payment.
So the Act says it is terminated where the landlord gives you notice, especially if there are arrears. You have abandoned the house. The landlord gives you notice and tells you, wait, you left the place, you're not paying the money. So
there's no evidence that you still...
After 14 days, without any response,
he can re-enter the
The
premises.
thing is terminated.
Yes.
The relationship is terminated.
Yes.
Yes. Other modes of termination, we've discussed notice.
And by mutual agreement, of course.
Of course, yes. You agree that I am leaving, right? Or by a tenant leaving the place, but with the consent of the what?
Of the landlord.
Of the landlord.
Yeah.
You say in the morning you wake up, you've got a new place, like, you know. So the
conditions,
the condition of notice,
yes,
is not binding on the tenant really, right? But because the landlord gives you the consent, they have to give you the consent,
yes,
for you to leave their premises.
To leave, yes.
Right.
Meaning, if there are no arrears,
exactly,
there's no damage to the property, or if there is damage, you've repaired the property.
Yes.
Okay, that's
because ideally, then if it is, I believe, common logic is that there is already a security payment.
Definitely.
Right? So it is kind of works.
It runs,
yes,
as okay. Thank you so much for that elaboration. Welcome back to the Outlook. Council, what is your opinion about this new law? Does it actually solve the issues that have been happening in the landlord and tenancy laws of the country? What are your thoughts on the new law?
Well, it really depends, because I can only give you my opinion, and that is, for me, I still believe, whereas it has put safeguards for the tenants, I still have believe that it still favors the landlord more, and it gives them kind of like an upper hand, which leaves the tenants in a kind of
vulnerable
take it or leave
position.
it position, right? If you can't
Yes.
pay this, this kind of position. Because, for example, if you look at that issue that we discussed earlier of the 10% increment,
Yes.
I do not know how they considered it, because if you look at, for example, commercial premises, it does not make business sense. For that 10%, it's quite high, and I've had a number of business owners complain about that particular provision, right? It really favors. Then another issue mainly that I have that hasn't been tackled by this particular law is issues to do with dispute resolution. When you look at the law, it kind of makes it your only point of where you're going to run to is court.
Yes.
Right? Now, one of the issues that we should be tackling with is like the backlogs, and to be able to resolve such disputes quickly, right? So
judicial officers don't have time.
They don't have time, and things by the
they
time
already backlog on so many other issues.
By the time you go to court, there are already other issues, and you're going to court for a matter of about like
600,000
million
per month. Then you're
going to
pay so much more money to the lawyer.
You're going to court for
in small claims you don't have
things for small claims whereby you don't have to use a lawyer and all that. But then still, the procedure steps that are required in court, you understand, the civil procedure, it's a lengthy
process, yes.
So that even if the matter is above the amount of money threshold of small claims, and you're going, say, to the magistrate's court, the procedure that is involved,
it's really lengthy,
is hectic.
Yeah.
So if you look at other jurisdictions, they've put in place tribunals.
Yeah.
Even here in East Africa, there are tribunals that you go to resolve the dispute between a landlord and a tenant.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of speedy. And
speedier.
Yeah, speedier than, you understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some of the issues that we have.
I'm just going to take you back a bit, because you first mentioned that you felt the landlords were more favored. But then you also later said you felt that the rent 10% increment was unfair. So I think at that point I was a bit lost. That doesn't seem like a favor to the landlord. That seems like a favor to the tenant. Because the tenant, who is only subjected to 10% increment once a year. So if I'm paying 500,000 and 10% increment is 50k, I think that's fair.
Not necessarily.
To me, the tenant.
This is how I'm looking at it.
And it's less for the landlord.
This is how I'm looking at it. Is that you are putting a 10%, and you have not considered the other factors that are involved.
Okay.
So we are looking at price of commodities, right? Which is possibly also going up, right? So I have to spend more money. But when my income is still the same, it wouldn't make financial sense for me for things to keep on going up.
Going up, yeah.
When my income that is coming in, my revenue.
Oh, you as the tenant,
Yes, me as a tenant.
You're still earning the same amount of money at office or at your business, and then your landlord says, give me 10% more.
Yes.
And then
so I'll give you an example, right? Recently there was an issue of oil prices going up, fuel prices going up, right?
Sure.
So you look at a person who is renting land, an owner of a petrol station renting land.
Yes.
And the fuel prices go up.
Yes.
He's purchasing that fuel at
a
higher
higher
prices,
price.
Right?
Yes.
And this landlord is coming to tell him that every year I am increasing.
Yes.
You understand? So it's kind of an issue that needs to be, at least if there had been a tribunal, the same tribunal that I'm talking about,
that you're talking about, yes,
that was put in place to say that, you know what, if there has to be an increment, let it come to us and we decide, depending on the zonal You understand?
I see.
So if,
Yeah.
because it's not, for example, if you look at Kampala,
Mm.
it may be bringing in more money, and the rent increment may make sense.
Mm.
But then if I go to Nakasongola and
Yes.
increase the rent, or go to Mbarara or Kawali, increase this, it cannot be the same.
It's true.
You understand?
True. True.
So there are some of the issues.
That's true.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that the act is good in its own way, because it kind of also protects, you know. But then, if you look on the side of tenants, of landlords, why I'm not somehow also satisfied with it is the issue of the requirements of putting up the relationship. For example,
Yes.
you ask for the ID identification.
No one is asking the landlord's identification.
For me, that causes a little bit of issues.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Because it
I also want to know who are you.
If you
as
are
my
doing
landlord.
that, yes, I understand that. But then if you're doing that, there should be measures that are put in place, like, for example, a screening process, a more serious screening process.
Yes.
Good. Where are
Yes.
you coming from?
Exactly.
What is your criminal background? Can I go to the police and I get a letter, bring a letter clearing you of any? Because I want to know, if you're a murderer, are you coming to my house? Serial killer, are you coming to do all that? You understand? So I need
have
to know
also
you.
seen a question about, one question has come in about Airbnbs and things of that nature. If we have anything in the law that covers Airbnbs, I don't know if the viewers can have, some of the viewers have Airbnbs. How does this law tackle it?
Well, the law only tackles residential and business premises, and it's very clear about that in the definition. It talks about it only applying to those
Residential
and business premises.
So it doesn't talk about hotels.
It does not apply to
Airbnbs,
hotels. And
basically short-time stay premises.
yes, it does
doesn't.
not apply. But you see, Airbnbs are different in a certain way, because an Airbnb, I can come and rent it for over a month, 2 months, 3 months. You understand? So that kind of now brings in a kind of question is where do they fall? Because Airbnbs are kind of a new a new thing.
They do.
Right?
But I think Airbnb, the app itself, has like terms and conditions that a tenant subscribes to, which are more or less like one could use as an agreement. If you agree to the terms and conditions, then you're bound by those terms and conditions.
Yes, it does, but the issue is the applicability in the country, that because Airbnb is not a Ugandan company. I mean, of course, like recently you saw the decision of Facebook being liable in Kenya being passed. You understand? Because Facebook was saying that it cannot be taken to a court in Kenya, right?
And then the decision said otherwise.
You can be sued.
Yes, you can.
So I think it is important for laws to tackle these issues, and I'm sure by the time a law goes through the whole process of consultations and all that, you understand? Yes, and all consultations have been made. You know, the relevant stakeholders have been consulted. They have given their opinions. You understand? All these reports have been written. So it ought to be covering all these things.
All those things.
Yes.
Yeah, but then the law is an ever-evolving thing. So maybe in a few years, those will be, I don't know, hopefully.
Well,
hopefully we'll get there. You know, Uganda is one of those countries that actually we are always amending our laws. We amend our laws a little more than our East African countries around here. Hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah.
So what's your final take? What are your final thoughts on this law? You've already said you're not satisfied with some of its provisions. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, the recommendations, I think, are in the things. I mean, all these things have to be incorporated in the law. I mean, they have to be catered for. Most of the things that I have pointed out are appear or are incorporated in other jurisdictions' laws. So why not? Why not be incorporated in such
So it's
laws?
still wanting.
Yes, so maybe when at the point where they are going to or maybe when we have more forces talking about these things, maybe Parliament or someone in Parliament or a person can originate such a motion for the amendment for some of these things to be included.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure hosting you. I hope our viewers have learned a thing or two about landlord and tenancy laws in Uganda. Till next time, this has been The Outlook.